Okay, the subcommittee will come to order. Okay, the subcommittee will come to order. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome the Intelligence, Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee markup and begin by thanking everyone for their important work in this bill for fiscal year 2020 National Defense Authorization Act. I want to extend my sincere thanks to Ranking Member Stefanik for outstanding bipartisanship and support for the sound, transparent collaboration between our subcommittee staffs, Lindsay, and I want to thank especially Lindsay, Bess, Jessica, Josh, Pete, Eric, Jason, and Caroline, whom I can say without hesitation today certainly would not be possible. So job well done to the staff, and obviously also to the members for their contributions to the getting the mark to where it is today. I would say I also want to thank Lee Maiden on my staff for her contributions and her extraordinary work on this as well. So this year's mark represents the key interest areas of the IETC subcommittee over the course of the last year, prioritized through our steadfast commitment to ensuring the Department of Defense plans for, invests in, and matures the relevant warfighting and deterrence capabilities to secure our national security equities and posture the joint force effectively against the capabilities of our opponents. To strengthen the oversight of and accountability by the Department of Defense, this year's mark focuses on security of critical defense technologies and processes, strengthening oversight of sensitive military operations, continued use of special operations forces and protections of this exquisite human capital, maturing science and technology capabilities and activities, and the undeniable contribution by our allies and our partners. Through the lens of the 2018 National Defense Strategy, our bipartisan efforts include important provisions that span the entirety of the IETC jurisdiction, from cyber operations to special operations. Special operations forces have been oriented to counterterrorism and counterinsurgency operations and contingencies now for almost 2 decades. Alignment to the National Defense Strategy requires soft proficiency in things like different languages, cultures, and skill sets. U.S. Special Operations Command will need to take advantage of emerging technologies to equip soft operators and enablers to operate in new and challenging environments and ensure that current organizational constructs meet the objectives of the National Military Strategy. Thus, the mark includes a provision requiring an independent assessment of the force structure and role and responsibility of SOF so that we can ensure they remain the pointy end of the spear in today's environment, and that SOF capabilities are used for SOF missions, and that we have a better understanding of what SOF should be engaged in and what regular military should be handling. So the mark also places substantial emphasis on the maturation of the Department's science and technology initiatives, ranging from requiring studies on the effects of historically underfunded science and technology activities to an assessment of essential STEM skill sets required to support emerging and future warfighting technologies, including an analysis of the recruitment, retention, and representation of minorities and women in the current and projected workforce. So the mark also includes a provision that requires the Secretary of Defense to better align policy formulation with technology development. Technological development often outpaces policy formulation, which can delay use in the battlefield or result in misdirected investment. Policy should promote sound development and deployment of new capabilities. So we want to make sure that they're happening as close to simultaneously as possible. So there are several demonstrable examples of our commitment to defending the nation in cyberspace in this year's mark, but I'm going to focus on 2 specific examples. First is a provision which amends Section 1652 of the John S. McCain National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2019. This modification will extend the Cyberspace Solarium Commission's report due date, allowing the Commission adequate time to complete its imperative objective to develop a consensus on a strategic whole of government, whole of nation approach to protect the United States in cyberspace. I'm honored to sit on the Cyber Surveillance Commission, and I also want to mention and recognize Mike Gallagher, one of our Republican members who serves as the co-chair with Senator Angus King on the Cyber Commission, and enjoying working with all the commissioners and on this important mission. Thank Mike for his leadership. Another provision modifies Section 1647 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2016, which mandates a report for the evaluation of cyber vulnerabilities in for each major U.S. advanced weapons system, to include mitigation strategies to address or prevent these vulnerabilities through premeditated adjustments to research, development, and acquisition cycle. These vulnerability assessments are already proving their worth, and I look forward to the Department's continued effort to bring their findings earlier into the requirements process. The subcommittee remains committed to ensuring machine learning, artificial intelligence investments, and activities continue to mature and are considered for application across the Department. So given the technology's impact on enhancing analytic tradecraft and creating intelligence mission data for the Department of Defense advanced weapons systems and capabilities, this mark establishes more rigorous reporting by the Department's Chief Information Officer and the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence on the progress of the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center and the technical achievements of Project Maven. So the subcommittee recognizes that intelligence, of course, also activities of foreign actors may compromise America's innovative edge. So our oversight on this issue has made it clear that universities need improved assistance from the federal government in order to better understand the threats and protect their the research and intellectual property while remaining an open, collaborative research environment. I will support the creation of a collaborative body convening leaders from government, science, and security agencies, universities, and industry on a regular basis to explore these critical issues and examine near and long-term responses to an identified foreign threat. Finally, rigorous oversight of sensitive military operations remains one of IETC's primary functions. So several provisions in the MARC hold the Secretary of Defense accountable in notifying the committee regarding authorities delegated by the President for military operations in cyberspace, as well as for any operations that could carry significant collateral effects, including potential risk to sources and methods, intelligence collection gains or losses, and risk of potential retaliation. The subcommittee will remain steadfast in our commitment to ensuring that we provide the appropriate protections and authorities to keep this country and the warfighters safe. In closing, before I turn to Ranking Member Stefanik and her comments, I again want to thank all the members on the subcommittee who have contributed sound perspective to shaping this mark, to the impactful legislation that we have before us. As I said, this has been a strong team effort, both members and staff. I thank everyone who contributed their talents and their expertise to getting the mark where it is today. Of course, this wouldn't be possible with the great collaboration that I have with Ranking Member Stefanik. We've had that close working relationship in the past years when she was chair, and I'm honored to be working with her again as chair now and as my ranking member. So with that, Chair now recognizes Ranking Member Stefanik for her comments.
I want to start by thanking the chairman for his leadership and all of the members of this subcommittee for their attendance and participation in the hearings and briefings conducted this year in support of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020. We have explored important issues and done so in a collaborative and bipartisan manner. So for that, thank you to each of our members. I would also like to say that I appreciate the transparency the majority has had on the process thus far, continuing the long-standing bipartisan tradition of our committee and this subcommittee in particular. I'd like to highlight three broad themes that I am supportive and appreciative of within the MARC. First, I am pleased that the subcommittee MARC is active in all areas of our jurisdiction to include the addition of intelligence oversight within the subcommittee, as was done previously in the 113th Congress. I am also supportive that the MARC continues our focus on emerging technologies, including manufacturing technologies that are fundamental to our advancements and scaling of hypersonic weapons and directed energy. I am pleased that we have included an emphasis on basic research and the important contributions that universities and Department of Defense labs provide to our collective national security. I have also supported the emphasis on providing capabilities for our Special Operations Forces, including recommendations for additional funds in support of the Preservation of the Force and Families program. And I am also appreciative of the fact that this subcommittee is again initiating important oversight reviews to be conducted by the Government Accountability Office in critical areas such as electronic warfare, Special Operations Forces, and cybersecurity, all of which are included in the subcommittee MARC. As a second broad theme, this MARC continues the tradition of robust and bipartisan congressional oversight of current and sensitive military operations and activities, including cyber, counterterrorism, and intelligence operations. As I have said many times before, continued oversight of sensitive and ongoing military operations is a central role for this subcommittee. Many of the congressional oversight frameworks that this MARC amends were put in place several years ago by then Chairman Thornberry, as well as myself and Chairman Langevin, in a bipartisan manner. So I am pleased that we are advancing and modifying these frameworks to further enhance our strong committee oversight of the Department of Defense. And third, this subcommittee MARC provides a solid foundation for many of the cross-cutting issues we will discuss at the full committee markup next week, including 5G information and communications technologies, security as a function of counterintelligence, and many other important areas. Equally as important, at next week's full committee markup, we will discuss the overall top-line funding levels that this year's NDAA will provide for the Department of Defense. Our committee has heard from former Secretary Mattis, Acting Secretary Shanahan, and senior commanders, including Chairman Dunford, that 3 to 5% real growth in the Department of Defense budget is essential to maintain readiness recovery and our competitive edge over peer adversaries such as Russia and China. While our IETC MARC before us today does not include specific tables and funding, I believe that this MARC sets the right trajectory to support a strong defense top line to ensure military superiority for our men and women in uniform. And finally, let me also take a moment to thank the dedicated professional staff members of our subcommittee, and in particular, Peter Villano, Jason Schmidt, and Eric Snellgrove from our minority team, as well as Lindsay Kavanaugh and the entire majority team. Thank you again, Chairman Langevin, and thank you to each of my colleagues on the subcommittee for their hard work this year. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Stefanik. And before we proceed to marking up the subcommittee MARC, I also want to mention my military fellow, Jared Stout. So I wanted to make sure I acknowledged him as well. It's the process, you want to try to thank everyone, and invariably sometimes someone gets left out. I wanted to make sure I thanked Jared for his contributions also. So with that, we'll now proceed to mark up H.R. 2500, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. Copies of our subcommittee MARC and directive report language were made available and distributed to member offices on Friday, May 31st. Is there any discussion or question on the subcommittee MARC? Okay, if there's no further discussion, the chair lays before the subcommittee the text of the subcommittee MARC for consideration. Without objection, the MARC is open to amendment at any point. Okay, are there any amendments to the subcommittee MARC? Okay. Okay. Okay, hearing none, there's no amendments offered. The question now occurs on the adoption of the mark. So many are in favor. Will say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the mark is agreed to. Okay. With that, the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, the vice chair of the subcommittee, Mr. Crow, for the purpose of motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the subcommittee report the mark favorably to the full committee.
Questions on the motion of the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crow. So many as are in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Quorum being present, the ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. So without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Without objection, members have 5 legislative days within which to submit written statements into the record. So ordered. I also ask unanimous consent the staff be authorized to make necessary conforming technical and clerical changes and to remove from the mark provisions that would cause the mark to refer to another committee or result in additional direct spending or would result in an earmark. Without objection, so ordered. So with that, there being no further legislative business before the subcommittee, again, thanking everyone for their contributions to this effort. It's a mark I think we can all be proud of. Look forward to the full committee markup next week. It's going to be a long day, but I want to again thank everyone, staff, members, for all of their efforts. And with that, the subcommittee stands adjourned.